Welcome to episode 108 of the Nero Show. In today's episode,
the experience of using Ozempic to lose weight as a road cyclist. What's it like actually training when you're on the drug? We bring in a guest to chat through it with us.
It's my turn to fall down a rabbit hole. We are looking at aero helmets, the tests, and what helmet to buy in 2024.
Some spy photos of a new unreleased Ridley aero bike. What do we think about it?
Low cadence. Is it the secret to unlock the greatest cycling career you've ever had? Who knows? Let's get into it. All right, we've been meaning to do this chat for a while, so we thought we'd bring my lead-out man on, Dan Vanderland of Amy's Grand Fondo fame.
Dan tried out the world-famous celebrity fat loss drug, Ozempic, and tested it out while essentially trying to train, which is probably going to get more popular as the general public start taking it more, and then riders start taking it more who are overweight, and then they're realizing that they're trying to mix training and the drug for weight loss. And then so I thought we'd get Dan on to chat through. I've never seen it discussed. I've seen that people discuss, Ozempic and Wegovy and things like that, just in relation to losing weight, but not trying to do that and train at the same time. And Dan's got first-hand experience of trying it, so we'd like to pick his brain on what it was like.
What was it like, Dan?
Did it work, firstly? Did you lose weight? How long did you take it for?
Yeah, so that's probably the first big thing is it did work. It definitely worked for weight loss. We're going to go straight into how I felt on it. As you guys would know, Chris and Jesse, I've been up and down with my weight my entire life. I'm classic yo-yoer. And I'm someone that's been I'm just hungry all the time. I'm never not hungry. And going on this drug, it probably took 24, 48 hours. And I was like, oh, I'm not hungry. I'm not constantly thinking about where my next meal's coming from. So that, as far as that goes, that was kind of actually like a really huge change for me and something that felt really, really different. And yeah, I lost weight. So I did it in the end for 4 weeks, and I lost about 4 kilos over the 4 weeks. And then probably the best part of it is it set up some habits, and I just kept losing weight afterwards. So my goal, I was at 85.4 kilos the morning that I started it, and I finished at 81.4, exactly 4 kilos. And then over the next 3 weeks, I kept losing weight, and I got down to my goal weight, which was to be under 80, and I weighed 79.1 3 weeks later.
How long ago was this?
It was about July this year.
And what do you weigh now, out of interest?
78 or so.
Oh,
dropped a couple more kilos.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't bounced back in the 4 months since.
Can I just quickly talk about riding? So you trained obviously prior to this, but then talk me through your training when you started taking Ozempic.
So I was in sort of a build block at the time, and what I wanted to do is kind of not do anything to my training, not change my training and stuff, and just see what happened when I was taking it. So I kept trying to go with the build block, and it was a horrible experience. I can't even explain what it's like. I've lost weight plenty of times before. So when I started this year, I was about 89 kilos. So I'd already lost sort of 4 or 5 kilos in the lead up to this. Like I said, I kept losing weight afterwards. But when I was losing weight on this, it was just a different experience. And I don't know, I cannot wrap my head around mechanically why it would have happened. Can't figure out the mechanism. But I just got on the bike, and every time I got on, I felt terrible. Didn't matter if it was a short ride, didn't matter if it was a long ride, didn't really matter if it was intensity or not intensity. I felt completely horrible on the bike, and it wasn't even that sort of empty feeling that you get when you don't have glycogen. It was just, I could not do it. It just felt bad, and that's the only way that I can explain it. So yeah, I kept going with my training. My threshold was probably 320-ish before taking it. And while on it, I probably effectively trained to a threshold of about 280, maybe even 270.
Oh, that's brutal. That is brutal.
And that wasn't even 270, 280, and it felt okay at 270, 280. It just felt terrible.
And so you felt that almost sort of somewhat instantly. It wasn't like over a few weeks you sort of slowly degraded and then you felt like it was that at the end. You kind of felt like the way the drug was interacting, that was just where your fitness was at almost instantly.
It's tough to say. Like, I lost 1.6 kilos in the first week. And I actually had a look back in prep for this. And the day after my first injection, I did a set of efforts. And that was okay. Like, it was like a hour-ish. I was doing like some threshold stuff and then little bits of rest in between, but it was practically an hour effort. And I did an hour at 300 watts. It wasn't too bad. It didn't feel quite as good as the weeks before, but this is like 24 hours after taking the drug. So I felt okay then. That was the last time I remember feeling okay. Every ride I did after that, I felt terrible.
This is where my head's interested in, is more in the, like, how it relates to exercise. Do you think there's a chance, and I want to throw some mechanisms at you that could be impacting your aerobic performance as well, but just on that in particular, given how fast that weight loss happened, even though you felt like you weren't bonking, you were obviously in a gigantic calorie deficit to lose weight that fast. Do you think you could have sort of been bonking, but the way the drug was interacting was masking that feeling because you just weren't hungry?
Well, that's sort of why I pointed out that I'd lost 1.6 kilos in that first week, because I can't be sure that it wasn't, but it was a different feeling to the bonking feeling. I just couldn't do it. It wasn't that sort of empty feeling. And like, even like when I do bonk and stuff, like I can usually smash some carbs and then I start to feel a little bit better. It wouldn't matter if I tried to smash carbs or anything like that. It just felt horrible. Like, there's just no way, no other way for me to explain it. Like, I was tempted to go off it after like 2 weeks, even though I was losing weight, just because I didn't want to ride my bike because of how bad I felt. Could have been a bit of a bonking type thing, but like, I was pretty good with like, all right, I'm going to do a session. I'm going to have some high carbs, like maybe even the night before, but generally like at least a few hours before the session and stuff. And I'll have like, I was going for like lollies and stuff. So it wasn't much volume to try and get those carbs in, but none of that really seemed to make much of a difference.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So you were still strategically trying to fuel the sessions, even though the overall calorie deficit would be high. Okay. Okay.
What was your diet like whilst on the drug? You often, everyone I've read about it, it's this thing of like, oh, it changes your relationship to food. You just don't feel like eating. Like and as an athlete who's aware that they were trying to fuel what they were doing, like how did that play out day to day for you?
I definitely had a lot of those sort of feelings as well. So my diet didn't change massively. I think generally I have a pretty good diet. Like I said, I was losing weight before this. I'd counted calories, stuff like that. I knew what I was eating, and what I was eating was pretty good. My issues were volume and like binging, because I'd, try and restrict myself, and then all of a sudden I'd binge. And so the big change in this was like, I would eat a smaller meal and I would just feel full, and I wouldn't, get home from uni at like 5 p.m. at night, 6 p.m. at night, and be absolutely starving and want to eat everything. I'd be like, I could eat food, but I don't really need to eat food. So yeah, it was that change of relationship with food. It was really like, I went from thinking about my next meal all the time, hunger was there all the time, like nagging at me, to it just wasn't there. And like, another way I've talked to a few people about it is like, because I'm doing my PhD at the uni, sometimes you go in and there's like cakes or biscuits or any of that sort of stuff on the staff table, and usually I'll be like, oh, I'll have one of them. And I just looked at it and I'm like, I don't need that. Like, it's just not appealing to me anymore. Like, I'm not hungry, and it's just that different thought process around it too. I just don't need it.
Just to keep it kind of high level, to keep things moving. So you took it for 4 weeks. Now you haven't taken it. Like, if you're a coach, if you have a rider and they says, I've spoken to my doctor and they're recommending this, I heard about this drug and the doctor's kind of approved it, but I'm kind of worried about how that's going to impact my riding. What's your sort of recommendation now based on your experience?
So yeah, from the coaching side of things, it would be about weighing up the pros and cons. So there's definitely pros for losing weight if you are an overweight athlete. Like, I lost weight. I can't argue with those pros. But it does take away from the riding. You are going to, like, for me, I did bounce back afterwards. It probably took a week or so afterwards, but I bounced back up to the threshold, was back up around 320, 330 pretty quickly after getting off it. But you're going to go through a bad time on it. You're not going to ride well. So if you're like leading up to a goal race or something like that, I definitely would not recommend it. And that's what I did. I was leading up to nationals, and I don't think it was good for me in the long run to do it. But if it's like in the off season, you just want to drop a few kilos in the off season, you might not be training as much. Maybe you'll be doing a bit more gym work, that sort of thing. I can see definitely the benefits for doing it in the off season. If it's someone that really needs to change their relationship with food, I can see it being really beneficial. So like that's my thoughts about it is like for the general public, I can definitely see big benefits for it with changing relationships with food. Even with a 4-week period like I did, I feel like it has had ongoing changes with me. I don't know, maybe I shrunk my stomach or something like that, but I haven't been quite as hungry since.
I would just say, can I just say one thing? Just on that sentence of like if you're just sort of in winter and you want to drop a couple of kilos, I just want to. That seems like a very ad hoc. I know you probably just said that you didn't maybe necessarily mean it. I just want to flag that you should, it's a serious drug that you should be discussing with your doctor if you're like clinically overweight and you need it. I wouldn't just be kind of, I'm 3 or 4 kilos over. I might just hop on for a couple of months.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mean it like flippantly like that. What I meant is like that's the time of the season that I would be doing it.
Yeah.
Anything, in the lead up to or around races, it's not just going to affect your training, but it's going to affect your want to get on the bike. And it probably took me like a couple of weeks to recover from those feelings of just feeling so bad on the bike to actually wanting to ride my bike again. So the only time of the season that I would do it would be sort of off season, maybe early base type, but like even endurance rides didn't feel good on it. Like nothing, it didn't feel ever good. Like it's not like I could be like, oh yeah, you can go out for 1 or 2 hour easy rides and it feels fine. They still didn't feel fine. They still felt hard and uncomfortable.
Before we wrap this up, Jesse, do you want to have a little bit more of a chat just about the kind of...
I do. I'm interested because there's clearly something going on here that's not just, oh, well, it's making me eat less and my calories are down and therefore that's why I feel bad. I feel like there's got to be something else going on internally that's potentially causing it. Can I throw some things at you, Dan? Actually, what I'll get you to do first, for those that don't even know what this drug is, can you give us like a 3-minute overview? Like, what are we talking? I mean, I said Ozempic, Wegovy, and things like that. What are these drugs doing?
Yeah, so they're part of a group of drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists. The other name that they go by is semaglutides. And they were originally developed to help people with manage their blood sugar and type 2 diabetes. However, they've found out that they work really well in weight loss. So it's a naturally occurring hormone in the body, glucagon-like peptide, and it's normally released when you eat something. And so, this drug mimics that naturally occurring hormone. And so its main mechanism of action is on insulin secretion. So it stimulates insulin secretion. And insulin helps to lower your blood glucose, and it puts blood from your glucose from your bloodstream into your cells, liver, muscles, that sort of thing. And then the other one that I really felt is it slows down your digestive system. So all the research says it slows down gastric emptying. I actually think it might have more of an effect further down the digestive system as well. I feel like there's probably more stuff was slower moving through the intestines and stuff as well. So
don't you reckon it's funny that one of the mechanisms, it stimulates insulin secretion, but we've talked about the trainer thing before. They're like, don't eat an apple. Think of the insulin spike. And what does this drug do? It makes your body secrete more insulin. It's almost the opposite of what you would you'd think an overweight person would want?
The weight loss side of it, I think, comes in possibly more in that slowing down of the gastric emptying, but also GLP-1. There's receptors for that glucagon-like peptide or GLP-1 in the brain, and those receptors in the brain, they help sensations like food cravings, like hunger, and feelings of satiety or how full you feel. So I think possibly the diabetes effect is mostly on the insulin secretion, but maybe the weight loss effect is more on the slowing of the gastric emptying, and maybe the effects at the brain level on the feelings of hunger and satiety.
So as it relates to endurance performance, like I'm going to throw a couple of things here that might be happening internally that could have been making you feel so bad, and unfortunately, there's just no research on this, so this is all speculation. So firstly, it reduces glucagon secretion. So glucagon's the hormone that converts stored glycogen to boost your blood sugar. So obviously, if insulin's high, glucagon's low, and that means you're not able to release as much glycogen from the muscles or the liver into the bloodstream. And so what's that doing? Well, you've got a lower rate of endogenous carbohydrate availability and less fuel while you're exercising, because that pathway is getting blocked essentially. So that's one thing.
If we go into that one, I don't think that's going to play a big role, because when you're exercising, you're going to use muscle glycogen or blood sugars or glucose in the bloodstream. Glucagon removes glucose or glycogen from the muscles or from the liver and releases it into the bloodstream. When you're exercising, you can get some of that glycogen from the liver, but that doesn't actually give you that much glycogen. And you should already have the glycogen, hopefully, in the muscles. So it could play a role, but its role would be indirectly. My only thought, as far as there's possibly some complex interplay with exercise that I just don't understand. But my only thought, as far as the blood sugar side of things went, or as far as insulin, glucagon type thing went, is that your blood sugar would just get low because you're producing more insulin. So that's trying to get it out of your bloodstream, and you're not producing glucagon. So you're not getting it top back up into your bloodstream. So you should still have plenty of glycogen in the muscles, which is usually what causes fatigue and a lot of longer efforts type things. But because all the mechanisms are going to reduce blood glucose, your blood glucose is getting low, and maybe there's some sort of receptors around the body that limit your exercise due to low blood glucose.
Okay. I'm going to throw some more. So you mentioned the delayed gastric emptying. I mean, seems pretty obvious, but yeah, if you've got slower pass-through time of any food, drink that it's going through your gut, there's less carbohydrates being absorbed. So, yes, that's then going to affect. So you've got what we were just talking about there with blood sugar from all the internal sources, but also the external sources are slowed down because you're not digesting food, drink, sugar as fast. So that would obviously have an impact.
So I found on the bike, I almost couldn't eat at all. Liquid nutrition was sort of the only way for me to feel okay eating. I just did not want food, and it would sit there more. Like you could feel it sitting in your stomach more, so it just wasn't the most comfortable sensation. But I did keep up the liquid nutrition, and it sort of felt okay to do that. That doesn't ever sit in your stomach for a long period of time, so I felt like that probably passed through pretty well. And I would say on rides, I'd get 3 hours in and I probably wouldn't feel any worse than when I started. So I think possibly that was working to some degree, keeping up that liquid nutrition to keep the body going. It just felt horrible the whole time.
Yeah. So that's probably going to help if you do happen to be taking it and riding, try and move more to fluids. Although if you don't feel like eating solids anyway, there's no point me saying that because you're not going to be eating them. I got another one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I would be making sure you're still getting some sort of glucose in when you're riding, or sugars in when you're riding.
Okay, what about this, Dan? So usually circulating insulin levels are fairly low during exercise because your blood sugar is getting absorbed by your muscles anyway. but the drug increases insulin secretion. And so your insulin levels while exercising are potentially higher than they normally would be. And the presence of insulin lowers your rate of fat oxidation. And so you've got potentially a situation where you're with what's going on with glucagon, a lower rate of blood sugar availability from glycogen, plus a lower rate of fat oxidation because you've got this higher than normal amount of insulin circulating around. And that's almost a double whammy. Less carbs to burn, less fat to burn. Not less fat to burn, but less rate of fat being burnt. And so just overall, the total amount of energy available for your body is kind of lower from both ends potentially. It's another way it could be happening.
Yep. I don't think I can argue with the logic there. Like I was saying, I think it is related to that low blood glucose. Everything's pushing glucose out of the blood, and not filling it back up either by not eating as much or by not having that glucagon present. As you said, during exercise, we usually don't produce that much insulin because there's that natural flux towards taking the glucose out of the blood. So having more insulin probably not that helpful there. And what you said about the fat oxidation, I didn't really think about that because although endurance exercise still didn't feel good, endurance exercise was just kind of as bad as what the higher intensity efforts were. I mean, I did try and do a couple of VO2 stuff and that just wasn't happening. So the real high intensity stuff just wasn't happening. But the threshold stuff and endurance stuff kind of felt similar levels of average. So maybe there was a bit of a decrease in fat oxidation that I hadn't thought of that yet, but I think it could be a factor. And couple that with the lower blood sugar, so you're not getting as much glucose in that way or sugars in that way. Kind of makes sense that could.
My last question is a quick double barreler for you. Number one, do you think pros are taking it? Number two, do you think the UCI will ban it or WADA will ban it?
No, I don't think. If pros are taking it, it's probably only in the off season. The other thing I thought about and that I'm not really conclusive with from this is there some sort of training effect to it? Because you struggle through this period so much that if you can train through this period, you're training other energy systems and maybe getting fitter from it. But it just messes with your training so much that I cannot see any pros taking it. Will WADA ban it? Same sort of thing. Like it just makes you feel so bad as far as endurance exercise goes. Like I was doing a bit of running around that time as well because I like to run a bit in winter just to not have to ride in wet, cold winters. And running felt even worse than riding, I reckon, because it's just naturally a bit higher intensity. So I can't see WADA going, oh, look, this is performance enhancing because it just really was not performance enhancing.
Okay. Interesting. All right, mate. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely awesome. This episode is supported by Peaks Challenge Falls Creek by Bicycle Network, Australia's most legendary cycling challenge.
Taking place on March 9th next year, it's 235 kilometres of world-class cycling in Victoria's high country. The route clocks up over 4,000 metres of climbing, taking on Tawonga Gap, Mount Hotham, and the notorious back of Falls Creek. It's the kind of elevation test you'd usually see in the biggest mountain stages of the Tour de France. But Chris Miller, you've done it twice before. What makes it special for you?
I have done it. I've made a video about it. It's completely unique. It's the whole experience that makes it unique, really. Of course, you've got the physical challenge, but on top of that, you have this incredible alpine vistas, the camaraderie amongst entrants, the outstanding support from Bicycle Network, and above everything else, that sense of achievement every single rider will feel when they make that left turn into the finish line at Falls Creek. Now, keep in mind, Bicycle Network is there to get you to have the most rewarding day possible, with training options to make sure you've simply got the legs to finish it, and a team of wave leaders who ride the course at the appropriate pace to get you to the finish line in your goal time up to that 13-hour cutoff.
And November update, 80% of the tickets are already sold.
Yes.
It's going to sell out.
It is.
Therefore, the time to enter Peaks Challenge Falls Creek is now. Remember, it's on March 9th. You can enter at Bicycle Network or Peaks Challenge and take on the beast this Aussie summer.
And a huge, huge thank you to Bicycle Network for supporting today's episode. All right, Jesse Coyle, welcome
Hello.
to Gravel Week here
Hello.
on the Nero Show. You excited?
I don't know why you're saying gravel week. We've got a whole bunch of non-gravel topics, so
Yeah, but
nice try.
But gravel's on my mind.
Okay.
That's why I'm hydra packed up, ready to roll here.
Okay.
I got a big event coming up this
Can I
weekend.
have a suck?
No.
Pass it over.
This is actually hang on.
Good.
Yeah.
Sugar water.
Sugar water. No, so the plan is not. So I'm going to run just normal water in here.
Oh.
Can I quickly give a rundown of what I've got, what it's on for?
What are you doing?
I'm doing Dirty Warney this weekend, 250 kilometre, Australia's only gravel monument. I'm claiming it. So big gravel race this weekend. And on that thing there, the Cervelo Aspero, with those number 6 wheels on them. So carbon spokes in a gravel race. It's going to be very interesting. I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. Tyre Chat Conti Terra speeds, I think 45s, which measure just under 45s real terms. So this is my first ever, well, I would regard this as like it's not an ultra, but it's like it's not a 4-hour gravel race. They're the only things I've ever done. This is going into a different spectrum. And so it's the full Hydra Pack pacing strategy, like feeds. So there's 4 feed zones across the whole thing. It's going to probably be 8, 9, 10 hours, something along that sort of lines. So it becomes like the whole logistic support is a big element to it. Like, are you stopping at rest zones? How are you feeding there? I'm lucky enough to actually have someone who's going to be in there to give me things. But I'm gonna stick with the kind of our tradition, which is carry all the gear, all your carbs, essentially, and then all your outside support is hydration.
Okay.
It's kind of my plan.
Okay.
So I borrowed Edwin's hydro pack. So I've got 2 hydro packs, which will be the sort of 4-hour exchange. But yeah, apart from that, I've completely underestimated how hard this is going to be, I do imagine.
You're going to film it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That is part of the challenge. So I'm actually going to I'm going to do the clip-on guy just here, and hopefully then be able to like take it on, take it off.
So are you going to do a standalone video for it?
Yeah, that's my plan.
I don't have that much. See, I don't even know what I'm interested in. So that's why I'm interested in you to film it, so I can then watch the video, because I'm kind of like, cool. It's going to be really hard. There's some really, really good riders there. Australian gravel champion's going to be there. Lots of the elite domestic road guys are going to be there. So I think you're going to have your hands full.
But that's like the weird question when it comes to any of these events. Like normally, if I go to a bike race, I have a goal, which is okay. I'm trying to win it or something along those lines. The goal here is maybe top 20. I don't really know, but then. Because it's the gravel thing, it just all the other variables get thrown in there. And at one point, you're probably thinking, just it'd be nice to finish.
Yes,
you know,
that's potentially what.
And there's also that thing of like, how hard do I really want to go? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's in a bike race or a championship or something. It feels like you're willing to cross that line for the result because you're really passionate about getting that result at that race. This, for me, is still right on the border of great to have said that I've done it is kind of almost the achievement. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, it's still the reason I'm kind of excited, well, relatively, because it does have that. So Melbourne to Warrnambool is like one of the 2 Australian classic road races we have, that and Grafton to Inverell. So it's sort of got a little bit of that road legacy to it that still kind of gets me going a bit. I'm not a complete frother on this. Can I just point out? I am more than willing to sit here next week and say that gravel racing is fake news. I just want to say that just out of the gate. I just think the hype sometimes that the brands want us to all believe, I'm still on the fence.
Okay.
All right. So we'll play that out.
Well, let's just swivel back over into the road scene there, because as we've done many a time here on the Nero Show, Chris went down a bit of another rabbit hole this time, equipment related. Don't worry, back on equipment. This time helmets. Because you've been testing some different helmets, looking at how fast they are, and you've this time done a bit of the deep dive into this sort of aero road helmet review. What's fast? What's slow? How well ventilated are they? And I thought you'd get us to drag us down there with you.
Come on down, Jesse Coyle. Come on down. But as in classic Nero Show tradition, I'm not sure there's actually a conclusion here. But let me just lay out what I've been looking at. So specifically two articles, magazine-based articles. One was from Cycling News, which was from earlier this year, was from our man Josh Croxton, who was doing the mega bike test as well. He did the 23 road helmet wind tunnel test back in that wind tunnel in Silverstone. That full wind tunnel spec, 23 helmets across a few ventilated ones, a few aero ones. That one's been out there for a while. A couple of weeks ago, Velo Outside Online, so Outside Media, did an outdoor aero testing, CDA testing of, it was 7 road helmets. Now, that particular test used the GIBLI G10 aero sensor. Okay. Now, I do want to go through just quickly the results of the wind tunnel test, and then the results that we saw in the Velo test. But then where I kind of get lost. All right.
Yes.
And maybe you can
Okay.
help me out here.
Yeah. All right.
So just purely results-wise, obviously I almost feel like removing the Procen Air from this, but the Procen Air, so 40 kilometers an hour, 288.15 watts for the Procen Air with the visor. Only, less than 1 watt less was the Specialized S-Works Evade 3. Polarizing enough helmet looks-wise, but I think we can both agree certainly an aero-styled helmet. Just going down through them, Scott Cadence helmet, not a helmet I'm actually familiar with at all. Does look quite similar to our HJC. The Van Rysel Giro Escape Trek Ballista, pure aero-style helmet. Going down the list, the Oakley helmets back towards the end, the S-Works Prevail, which is the more ventilated one further down the list in 20th place. And poor old POC with its POC Ventral Tempest and the POC Ventral bringing up the tail. So
if you get rid of the real slop ones, POC Ventral, the 2 POC Ventrals, the Uvex Rise Pro, so they're 298 watts, 300 watts. Let's get rid of the Oakley Arrow 7. That's then leaving you with a range from the slowest at about 295 watts. And that includes the Specialized S-Works Prevail, which is the fully vented one, to the POC Procen Air at 288 watts. So 7 watts difference between basically a time trial ESC helmet and a fully vented Specialized helmet.
very true, Jesse. You look at those results and I totally agree with you. You're like, oh, very quite similar. That's interesting. Blah 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 blah. Oh, well, we might as well go into this now. But the problem with this okay, let's start with this wind tunnel testing. I'm going to bring up some pictures of our rider testing these helmets. And you tell me, when you look at those pictures, is that someone riding in an aggressive aero position, number one? And secondly, would you expect to see dramatic... secondly, do you think those helmets are designed to go fast in the position that rider has adopted?
Well, almost the first thing I saw when I looked at the results, and I went, well, if you're riding on the hoods, sitting upright, with your neck not even attempted to be tucked, your head not even attempted to be tucked down, you're not really gaining much by having a helmet with a lot more mass. That's especially mass that's behind the rear of the helmet that's intended to fill the gap between the head and the shoulders. So you're kind of doing this to me, what they've testing this now, it's better than having no testing, but this is kind of similar in essence to when they do the yaw angle sweep with the bike testing that we've talked about, and they go to these crazy yaw angles, plus or minus 20, plus or minus 25 that you hardly ever see, and it just kind of bunches all the results together. because all the results that really matter get all bundled in. And that's what I feel like's happening with this test here, that by choosing this position, you're not testing it in the position which you would really be wanting an aero helmet to ride in.
And nor do I think they're designed to go fast in this position. That's my point. So the ABIS Game Changer 2.0, which if we come down to that, the article says the very helmet used by Mathieu van der Poel, the Game Changer 2 helmet, is the definite aero first helmet. So the results here were a bit of a surprise. And they are. You look at them and it's almost down there in the slop range, right? But let's have a look at the picture of the rider in the test riding it, okay? And then let's bring up a picture of Mathieu van der Poel riding that helmet. Now, this is in Paris-Roubaix. So this is him not in his full aero position. So he's in the drops because he's obviously, going around a corner over cobbles, etc. You can see the tucking of the head, the dropping of the head, and how that therefore plays with the back of this helmet. And just like you said, that's where the benefit of these aero helmets, you can't, you can see aero a lot better than me, but I can feel aero, Jesse. And I feel that airflow towards the back end of that helmet is designed for the position that Van der Poel's in rather than the position that the tester is in.
Good example is, in their testing, the Casque Elemento, which has no rear shaping to it all, it's just purely round, was slightly faster than that ABIS Game Changer. But it's probably within the margin of error, just the same speed. But clearly there's more rear to that helmet. So I agree that...
it doesn't take a genius to...
But they've put the yaw angles in. I haven't bothered going through, and I wonder what the patterns would be if you started to only look at the yaw angles under 6 degrees and re-rank the testing only taking that into account. That could be interesting.
I mean, the position that the particular rider is in is not a position that you would adopt where you're seeking an aerodynamic advantage. You're probably in the wheels in that kind of position. So already the benefits is going to be reduced. But, okay, and I'm not here to shit on the testing. Like, it's bloody good that this stuff's being done. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's becoming very difficult. And this was me. Like, I'm trying to pick out. Ultimately, what I was hoping to do here is go, okay, what helmet would I buy in 2024? That's really what I'm trying to do here. And Jesus, it's bloody hard working on this stuff. So let's come to this other article that I talked about, because it's all good and well to do the wind tunnel stuff. Unless there's anything else in that element that you wanted to pick out, we can probably come back to it. Let me just mention this other article.
I mean, the one thing I would say is, I mean, the POC Pro Scenario was the fastest, but it's pretty hot, and it's got a visor, and it looks like a time trial helmet. It's almost unfair to even put it in there.
We'll get to the actual rideability of this stuff in a second.
All right.
So fastest road helmets tested by Velo out on the road with this aero sensor. Okay, I'm listening. I'm interested now. You got turbulent air going on. Oh, now we're in the games. Tried to test hands on the hoods with forearms parallel to the ground, i.e. in aero position. Couldn't hold that position for 6 Ks on an NV Melee. Right, so that's less than 10 minutes. Just like a wind tunnel, you need to remain in as static as possible position. After 3 Ks, my triceps were burning and I wasn't stable. Instead, I chose a casual position for an experienced rider on the hoods and in the drops. In both positions, I had my elbows bent and was hinged at the waist. In the drops, I wasn't all the way forward with forearms flat, but I also wasn't at the back with my arms straight. My bike position is aggressive, but it's not the best of what's possible. I would argue this person needs a bike fit, because if you can't hold that position for 3 Ks, we have an issue. But in my mind then, it very much sounds like the position that this guy is adopting is very, very similar to what the Cycling News writer was adopting. Would you potentially agree from reading that?
Based on what you've said, yeah. I just don't know what speed they were riding at. I mean, if you're just doing sort of endurance power fully in an aero position, almost all your weight's through your hands and your bum. So it can be quite hard to hold an aero position if you're not doing much power.
30 kilometers an hour.
That would be hard. For a relatively fit rider, that's going to be sort of zone 2 in an aero position, if not even under. So I can understand why his arms were getting sore, especially if you're testing this many helmets. That's part of the reason why.
But we're testing an aero helmet at 30 kilometers an hour in what I would regard as a not very aero position.
Oh, I think this is the same issues that the other test had. I'm just saying I can understand why his arms are getting sore. Have you ever tried to do an aero position ride on zone 2?
It's a super weird decision to have done this. Again, you're right. Like, the more power that you put out, the easier it is to be in an aero position. You're dead right. But let's just quickly talk about the results. So again, POC Pro Air was 5 watts faster than the Specialized S-Works Evade 3. So that's really held up across the 2 tests as the 2 fastest. Definitely the Evade being clearly the fastest sort of normal-ish road bike. The Giro Eclipse Spherical 7 watts. The Cast Utopia 7 watts. The Laser Z1 Connect Core 7 watts, which is like, that's not an aero helmet. It's a fully vented helmet. Was faster than the Trek Ballista.
The margin of error on this, firstly, just from the calculation alone from the Ghibli Aero sensor, plus the human error in actually doing the runs. Yeah, so the compounded error would probably be plus or minus 5 watts anyway. Just keep that in mind. I mean, that whole middle rung we've got here that are all bundled, +7, +7, +7, +8, and then even the Trek at +10. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, so the last sort of bit of, I suppose, info and stuff that I want to show is if you click that link there with the 2 pictures of me basically on it, or the 2 videos of me. So I got Mick to do this. I was getting another bike fit with Mick, my weekly bike fits, but we were playing around with, because I've got the POC, and we were playing around with how aero this is and what's the aero position for this particular bike. And you look across, so the position really on the left, the first one is ultimately very similar to, I think, to the position that those guys are testing in. Maybe they probably have a little bit more elbow bend than me there. But you compare that to the second picture, which is really the position that you would argue that helmet is designed to be in. And you can see that, I mean, I'm not good at it. I'm not a good example of it. But the way that what do they call it? Like the turtling head, that's where the aero helmet, especially the aero helmet with the tail, is designed to give you extra benefit. That's the point of it.
Yeah, and you're not really even shrugging at all.
No.
You could really train that.
Yes, as I said, I'm not a good example of it.
Yeah.
But again, this is, the reason I wanted to show that is, to me, that relatively aggressive position with the aero helmet, like that, then compared, you put a Z1, a full vented helmet on me there, like that's where the big, well, I would hope the big differences actually are to show up. And so coming back to really all this testing and the information that we kind of received from it, it's very difficult to, I mean, I came away from that going, Jesus, Z1 fully vented helmet. Wow, that's performing well, but it's performing well in a position that I'm not asking it to deliver aerodynamic results. I think, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it does. I don't have much to say about specifically the testing other than it's kind of somewhat interesting, I guess. But yeah, I don't have much. I really don't have much to add on it.
Well, like I said, the point of me doing this was to try and say, okay, because I do get this credit. Oh, do you like your helmet? You like your HJC helmet? Oh, would you recommend it? I'm like, okay, well, I probably would. So I went and had a look for some testing results of it, because I think it's vented quite well. It looks sort of fast, but there's very limited sort of testing apart from their own stuff on it.
The thing with helmets is there's just a lot more to consider than speed. Like priority number 1, how safe is it when you crash, which haven't talked about. In terms of just speed, well, what is there? There's basically 3 categories in here. You've got vented helmets, aero tweaked road helmets, which is basically what has your local shops got in stock and what looks good when you put it on. And then you've got the sort of polarizing ones. I'd put the S-Works Evade in that. I think that looks questionable
Borderline
with how
slot.
long it is. And then and then like the Pro Air and stuff, which is a whole different kettle of fish. Amongst that kind of mid-rung of Giro Eclipse, Trek Ballista, Cascutopia, take your pick.
That Van
Factor in
Rysel,
weight and how they feel.
that Van Rysel comes out very nicely,
Yeah.
I must say. I had not seen, as I mentioned, I hadn't seen that Scott Cadence before. I would imagine it looks quite HJC
It's
to me.
also got, that comes with plugs where you can plug the front holes if it's winter or if you're doing a time trial or something, if you don't need that airflow, and that'll save a few watts too. So then you got like X Factor little features like that. The HJC, which I've been using, doesn't have MIPS. Personally, I would get a helmet that has MIPS or some other proprietary in-house MIPS-based similar system. I think it's worth it. Do you care about MIPS?
I do. Just on the safety thing, though, I think we are kind of lucky in Australia. Well, lucky and unlucky, because it does mean that our helmets get very, very delayed on launches here, but they do have to pass an Australian-New Zealand standards test. So nothing you can buy at a shop is uncertified and regarded as not safe. So whilst there is potentially still a hierarchy to a helmet that you buy, even the lowest form of helmet that you buy is regarded as very safe. And from talking to, well, I've only ever spoken to one helmet brand person from overseas, and they kind of grumble at how stringent they are here with the testing. So that is at least one thing. The other thing is color. Like, I do think that plays a role even just from safety. I said that when I started riding the Pro Air, which was black before I put the wrap on it. I found myself super at risk half the time because it was that black helmet. But if you had to, you can't name a helmet that you would. So if you were out buying a road helmet next week, so your current one smashed, is there anything that you would, you know what, I'm going to try the insert here?
I like the look of, and that tested quite relatively well. I like the Giro Eclipse, looks quite good, and the Scott Cadence as well looks quite good. I like the fact it comes with the plugs. In winter, I'd probably use them. Certain races, I'd probably use those plugs. I like that. But I would also factor into account, I would do a bit of seeing of aero, and I would pick one that has more of the tail. The Evade and the Pro Air have the tail. And even though it's not coming up in the testing, I do think there's something there. So the Scott Cadence, even though it tested well here, doesn't have that much of a tail. So that's probably for me, who's just sort of racing and tends to ride in that tuck position. I'd probably have to go through and find. I actually think and the Trek Ballista has the tail, but it also has that gigantic vent at the front. Big vent. So maybe that's really quite breathable. So it's probably better there. I'd have to go through and look at ones, but I'd be looking for that tail personally.
Yeah, I'm at a bit of a loss what to recommend at the moment. I am riding that a bit at the moment, so I'll potentially talk
fully
about
vented,
that. Fully vented.
Full climb. So is that what you're using? Well, what are you going to use on? Long. Okay, long. Let me run through very long race. Average speed won't be super quick, but it's also not that hilly. Some climbs in there.
Gravel race.
Yeah. It's not going to be too hot. Pretty mild temperatures. Probably cold start. Maybe low 20s. Headwind.
20 kilometre an hour headwind. 100, 250
You're not going
Ks.
to. You're not going to use the Pro Air. It's too sweaty, too bulky, too heavy.
Says who? It's coming.
I think you're going to want a aero tweaked helmet, so you're not going to run that Cycle. I think that you're losing too many watts. I would say it's just a run-of-the-mill aero road. It's an HJC day.
I'm taking the HJC and the Pro Air down.
Okay.
And if the weather forecast is to stay less than 20 with potential drizzle around, it's Pro Air.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your predicted average speed?
I don't know. 8.5 hours, 250 Ks. Yeah.
What, 30, probably maybe
Somewhere in there.
33?
33, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so my thinking is...
It's a lot of weight. It's more the weight thing as well. If it's cool, you kind of got that.
It doesn't bother me too much.
8 hours of...
But I've got a camera
Listening.
on. This is how I think.
Right.
So I've decided that because I'm running a camera, I therefore need the aero advantage of the helmet. I don't know. Visually, like, this is another thing I find with gravel specifically is it really matters your vision to see obstacles and things to avoid and all that kind of stuff. And I do think the actual field of view of that helmet is second to none. And that to me is a pro. I could, yeah. Okay, here's my thing. I'm starting with the helmet.
I was going to say...
And I'm not against the idea of giving James.
Oh
James,
my
we're onto
God.
it, all right? We're going to do...
You're such a loser.
We're going to do a 4-hour in
Oh.
helmet swap, all right?
You're not Lockie
On.
Morton doing feed zone. Are you going to change kit? Second feed zone, just new skin suit,
Hey, I've
new
heard,
socks,
I've
new
heard
shoes.
the stuff that I was asking a few people, some of the stuff they do in these gravel races at the bloody feed zones, it's like F1 friggin' pit stops. Yeah, I'm. Why not? Like I'm
That's
making a
very
video.
pro.
Of it.
That's very pro, actually.
Do you like that? Yeah.
That's
Bike change?
Swap the helmet.
Bike
Bike
change
cha-
halfway? Don't know.
Do you have a second Despero?
No, I
You can.
don't. I don't. You don't. So you're right. I'll probably wuss out and end up going the HJC. But you're right. I wouldn't go that. I do feel like there's too much of an aero loss to it. And it's not going to be hot enough. So, we will see. I'll be very interested because you were mumbling the other week. This is almost why I started doing this. So you're like, oh, yeah, I feel like a look change. I feel like a helmet change. You were sort of like, oh, I could do one. And
mainly because that HJC Furion 2 that I've been on, firstly doesn't have any MIPS or anything, and it's kind of getting on now. Like that's probably got released 5 years ago.
There is a 3 released, and I did see it at Eurobike.
Okay.
But
I'm not just saying where to. I was just having a sniff around. Like, what's the aero road helmet market looking like? I've been out of it for a while. To be honest, nothing's really compelled me here. I've got the Pro Air, but it's getting to summer. I'm not going to use that anyway. And nothing else here is making me go, yeah. Unfortunately, that HJC wasn't tested in here.
the classic Sydney spec, just for those of you interested in the bubble, is the cask. That's like the classic Sydney rider.
Yeah. I just find that they're a bit of a rip-off, to be honest.
I just don't like the people who ride them.
Right.
You know who you are.
Oh, okay. But they are like what's a cask utopia? They're like
very
500. And
expensive,
I'm like, I mean,
Yeah.
I get, sure, charge what you want, but like, why does it have to be $500? Let's have a look. Actually, not on sale from $399 down to $379. But that's so that is also been around for ages. If I was going to get the cask, I'd get the new ugly one that covers the ears. Yeah.
Why isn't Vanderpoel riding the Canyon helmet? Does Canyon have a helmet now? Anyway, doesn't matter. It's probably got a sponsorship deal with Abus, I would imagine.
Yes.
Is the way that plays out. How much of an impact does just sort of sunglasses storage thing play with you? Because can I just say mine? I think it's the most overrated feature in helmets. I'm not putting my sunnies up there.
All right.
What are we doing? Like I'm wearing my sunnies.
Mine don't fit in any of my helmets. With what's that brand of glasses? What's my the Mantra don't fit in any of my helmets. So I haven't been able to put the helmets in because I've been using the same helmet and glasses for years. It's maybe when I get the feature back, I'll be like, oh, that'd be nice. Nah. Behind the back of the neck, I've got to take the glasses off.
Yep. The other thing is sun coverage. It's the unknown advantage of an aero helmet. If you're bald, do not get that helmet. You will just get these hilarious suntan lines down the middle of your forehead. All right, I reckon that's helmets done. What do you reckon?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we got another special guest coming. But before we do, Jesse,
Couldn't find the address.
Couldn't
They're
find the
getting lost.
address. Yeah, it's all happening here at the
Yeah.
studio at the moment.
Just a quick one.
Mm.
New Ridley.
Yeah, I saw this.
Now, people have been sending through these scrappy little trainer photos. Chris, roll it out. You've done well to get this one.
So yeah, like you said, I've been kind of hit with this a few times.
Mm.
I gotta say, I think I was in Noosa the first time I got a grainy photo of this appearing. An image that what it looks like is the new Ridley Noah.
Yes.
With a Chris Miller head tube on it. Like that looks dinner plate-ish, I have to say. So I am particularly excited what I am seeing from these little spy images.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Have you got any insights? It looks a bit like the new Orbea.
Well, there's a lot of confusion. It doesn't look like anything like the new Orbea. It looks way more aero than new Orbea.
Actually.
People were confused in the comments because it was put on Instagram, this photo of the inner X-Rider on it, saying, "Oh no, that's a Photoshop their new aero bike." It's not. It's definitely a new Ridley Noah. You've got the proper photo of it in the stand. I mean, it does look eerily similar, which is just funny that you leave one brand, go to another brand, they release a new bike that looks almost identical to the bike you just left. It's almost quite comical. Yeah, it's got the same thing where it's that Elves Falith looking integrated headset area, deep head tube, deep fork, aero down tube, horizontal top tube, and then you've just got your slightly lengthened out seat post, seat tube, and drop seat stays. I mean, that's it. But the couple of things I make me nervous is...
Don't mention the wheels. You're not allowed to mention the wheels.
Okay, I'm not allowed to mention the wheels. They're really nice wheels, those. The stack height. I was going to bring this up because some people chat to me and go, "Oh, like, Jesse, I've got DT Swiss wheels." Like, I'm like, it's okay. Like, just relax. All I'm saying is if I was buying new ones or if I was displaying my bike to a global audience with the top spec, I wouldn't put them on, but they're fine. Don't go and buy new wheels because I don't like the TT Swiss ones. They are fine. Okay.
You've triggered an audience there. Can I just say, like, there is a fan club.
Right. Okay. I just feel bad when people speak to me in person. They feel bad because they got DT Swiss wheels. So I'm like, it's not that serious. Anyway, see, I wasn't even going to mention it till you brought it up.
No, I did. It's only because when people sent me these images originally, they were like, "Don't show Jesse the wheels." I was like, "Okay, fair enough."
Right. The stack height makes me very nervous. It looks very low again. I don't know what they're doing. So let's wait until we get a geometry chart. If this was released 6 years ago, I would be very nervous at how uncomfortable it's going to be. But given this will be a 2025 release, that'll be an interesting one. Can they manage to make that frame silhouette actually ride fairly comfortably and well? Question mark. And then also, can they get those carbon sidewalls thin enough that it doesn't weigh 8.3 kilos? Can they get it sub 8 fully built with pedals? But we don't know. All we got is some spy photos.
Oh, the Uno X boys will be happy. They'll be like, "Yeah, we went from one outrageous aero bike to another." Yeah, I'm on board actually. Where is Ridley for you? Ridley's like top 5 most how do I describe this? Top 5 most insanely vitriolic. And vitriolic's not the right word, but fans. Like if you're a Ridley fan, it's different to the Italian bikes thing. It's different to the I just buy a Trek every year thing. There's something else with Ridley. I know a few of these people here in Australia, and they're very, very. This is a man's bike. Like you will love this bike. No, it doesn't need any. Don't worry about weight or wind tunnels. It's just that brand. It's interesting. It's certainly got that connection for some reason. Consider it's probably just churned out of a factory right next to another factory.
Yeah. Probably the lotto effect of just hard man Belgian team sort of, it just gets passed on.
Uno-X is a good sort of fit for that.
It is. It does fit. I do like the move. It does make sense. No, I don't know. Ridley's, to me, is just sort of, it's a bluch. It's just a nothing, really. It's just, well, let's just look at it at face value when it comes out. It's not really pulling me either way, really.
It's a real Euro brand. Like, it's struggled here. I know it struggles a bit in the US, but there's certainly a connection to it. And
the thing I feel like it's missing, they've never really convinced me that they have really good R&D. There's brands where you feel like there's a room of people sitting around doing stuff. For some reason with Ridley, the bikes just kind of appeared. And they almost, at least to me, always seemed just like catalog bikes. That they were just picked and that's what they went with. So I don't know if that's something maybe in the social media or in the marketing stuff, but that's just what I always got from Ridley.
You don't need R&D when you got hard men with caps flicked up like this. You know, that's all you need, really, at the end of the day.
I think it's a cool brand. I like the name. The logo looks cool. I've always kind of liked Ridley's. Yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. Yep.
Cool. As the world needs another big all-out aero bike, as I am repeatedly saying.
What a turn of events. Because if you had said that 4 years ago, you'd be laughed out of the room. Oh, who's this guy? The world needs another aero bike. Yeah, right. Come on, bro. It's like it's gone full circle now where you can actually say that and it's, oh yeah, he's right. That's funny, isn't it?
All right, a few weeks back we promised some Tour of Southland chat, and we are on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the ground live with the boys themselves, Tom and Elliot. How are you today, lads?
Yeah, pretty good. We've just come into Riverton to Tiana, so stage 3. Yeah, pretty boring stage to be honest. But Elliot kind of got up for the.
Well, do you want to maybe just give us the quick 2-3 minutes about Southland, like, because this is
it's pretty much the biggest race in the world. Like, you have to, as a Kiwi, to my heart, 4th Grand Tour, and you guys got it wrong. There's no 4th Grand Tour other than this one. This is the biggest junior, non-professional race in the world. And, you know, people take this race so seriously. Like, it's unbelievable how seriously they take it.
Why do they take it seriously? I've always wondered that. Why would someone train the whole season for Southland? It's not even a UCI race. Can you explain this?
It used to be a UCI race, and then it just got so big. And because down south, there's not a lot down here. Like, this is the bottom of the world. There's not, from down here to North Pole, nothing else down here. And it was a UCI race, and it got so big that it didn't need that status anymore. They didn't need to pay the money to the UCI, and why would they? They gained so many riders. Like, Elliot's come here, and he knows he's not going to get any UCI points, and he doesn't need to.
It's too big for the UCI, Jesse. Mm-hmm. Southland. It could start its own.
Too big. That should be the slogan under the logo. Too big for the UCI.
Come to Tour of Southland. Too big for the UCI. So just run us through maybe this year's edition. Like, what are we looking at, stages, riders wise?
Stages and riders wise, I reckon Tom can probably give you a better in-depth because this is my first Tour of Southlands. But mate, the way that Tom is running the team for this event, it's been insane. Like, they've done a very good job. It's like such a professional environment. Like, for example, Tony, Tom's mum, she drops us coffee off in the morning from the coffee van, like just straight to your door. Like, we're well and truly looked after. Like, Tom's decked us out with like some really sick kit. He's given us like brand new helmets, like all specifically for this one event. So it's actually pretty insane. And like, Tom's also organized for there to be like masseuses that are like traveling to the stages to come and give massages after the event. Like, we're probably 3 hours away from Invercargill where we base ourselves, and they have a masseuse that's hired to be here. So it's insane, and everyone gets their custom kits, and it's sick. It's pretty cool.
What helmets? What helmets did you get, Elliot?
Is it the Evades? Yeah, we got the S-Works Evades. Ooh. Yeah.
Nice.
So nice and slippery.
What are your thoughts on the look of it? It's kind of a polarizing sort of thing because it's fast.
It is fast. It was like, when I put it on initially, it was a little bit different to get used to because I'm used to like having a bit of a rounded head type helmet, but this one was pretty narrow, but it sits a little bit higher on your head, I think.
So 2024 Southland, give us the 2-minute spiel on it, Tom.
Yeah, right. So it's 8 stages, including a TTT, which doesn't get counted at the start, and that's a horrendous way to start. And the weather down here is just like today, 23 degrees. Like, the boys had sunscreen on. Yesterday, annihilated in the crosswinds. It was raining and miserable at the start. And I think like the crosswinds here are just like something that it's you have to experience it to understand it. So when all the Kiwis go on like the crossies, like they're taking it real seriously. But yeah, tomorrow we've got the Remarkables. They've actually added 4Ks to the Queen stage, so it's longer. It's about a 45-minute climb for the good guys. It's going to be like a hour and a half climb for the poor boys who have to get up there, the sprinters and stuff. And then they got Bluff, which is like a 2K real steep climb, and then there's a few stages, and then individual TT, and then a pretty much parade ride, but still goes real hard into the finishing circuit.
You've been doing some Strava stalking there, Jesse.
See, this is why I love this race, because the race highlights go up, and then it's just these random people I've never heard of, like stage one.
Have you done it before,
the
Jesse?
Circuit. No, never done it. Never done it. No, so I'm not going over. Ugh. Rain and wind. Right. So this crit, and there's just some 80-kilo 19-year-old riding everyone off his wheel.
Yeah.
So let's play this through. So like last lap, this rider, James Gardner, is actually the Criterium champion, just on the front. Last 20 minutes, 500 watts normalized power for 20 minutes. Pulls a turn. Now, the rider that's coming, because Chris, you can play some of this video as we're coming through. The rider that comes through for sort of a 20-second pull, Sam Jenner, Australian rider, rides for best team in Australia. Now we're closing up. Really, like, fantastic rider. Pulls through for about 10 seconds, and then this huge guy in this, the yellow kit rolls over him again. This is about 800 meters to go. In the saddle. Good night, Irene. Off the wheel.
Did you see?
Literally ridden off the wheel into the last corner.
Did you see Sam Jenner's
takes the
comment
win.
on Strava about that?
No, I didn't actually.
His
What did he say?
Strava caption is actually unreal. It was like, with one lap to go, I glanced into the crowd and I saw a young boy tell his dad, please make it stop. Don't let him do this to them. And it's actually really good.
So James Gardner, he's 19. He's done 460 normalized for 50 minutes. And as I said, 500 normalized for the last 20 minutes and literally ridden everyone else as well. And that's why I like watching Tour of Southland, because there's just these riders you've otherwise never heard of. He did go and do crits over in the US this year. I had a bit of a stalk. But yeah, just people like that are just pretty much like pro level of talent, just giving it everything they can in a race that means a lot.
How do you think the rest of the race will play out, boys?
Yeah, well, to
What do you get your
touch
eye
on
on?
what Jesse was just saying, I guess like New Zealand's pretty much in the same boat as Australia. Like the races are so few and far between. So I guess all the guys in the field like maximize their training as best as possible because they want to make the few races count. And when they do race, it's really good racing. So that's for that point. For the rest of the week, Burnsy, I hope, is on for a good one tomorrow. Like the climb suits him to a T. The rest of the boys, we've got James Forbes, we've got Glenn, we've got Art, we've got Tynan, myself, and I think that's it. Yeah. And like the morale in the team has been unreal. So really hoping we can get a stage win. I think Burnsy's on for a good one tomorrow. So hopefully, if we do a follow up, Burnsy's taking the stage up the big climb tomorrow.
Yeah, like Jenner, probably from like the Aussies, he's put himself in a seriously good position to take that. But like Josh Burnett, like he's one of like my good mates. He went out and he's from the South Island. He's from Invercargill. So he knows everywhere. Like he's definitely calling up farmers 100 Ks up the road, being like, what's the wind doing? He knows what's going on. He's training on all the roads, and he took 3 minutes off of Ruben Thompson's from FDJ's time up the remarks about 2 weeks ago.
Legend. All right, boys. I reckon have you got anything else, Jesse, or we plan to follow up with the winner next week?
No, yes. And then, so Josh Burnett, the rider, I think he won last
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Right. So there's an example when he races Tour of Southland, he's on a New Zealand based team, but he's signed with Burgos BH, the pro team, for the next 2 years. So that's the other thing. You don't know who these riders are. They're just in random kit, but they're at World Tour level or pro level. So it's
unless they're a
cool to watch.
Copeland's rider, and then you know they're the real deal. Yes, yes. All right, boys. Thank you so much for that. We'll follow up next week with some results. Hey,
No, easy. Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you very much.
legend.
Good luck.
Thank you, boys. Sweet, nice one, lads. Be in touch. All right, off the back of that quick chat Jesse, road racing's back. Road racing is back. We called it. Actually, I don't need this on anymore.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that sounds so much better.
Oh, my God. How do people do virtual things like that? Thanks to the boys. Yeah, so road racing's back, and we called this, I think, the
Right?
gravel.
It's back where?
well,
Where? Who's?
in the
what's
US?
Red?
So,
Okay, right.
article here in Velo magazine outside, essentially saying so the new blueprint for road racing in the US is so this is a return of a road race, which is the Colorado. It's the return of the Colorado Eagle River Ride, renamed the Big Horn Road. So, and this is a little.
What is the gravel blueprint?
No, this is a road.
Yeah, but they're saying the title of the article says, "Is gravel the new blueprint for road racing?" I don't even know what the gravel blueprint is. Like, what does that even mean?
Essentially, using gravel events, using places that are hosting gravel events to now reestablish road events in the same area, and piggybacking off those events to get a road race and a road ride happening in the same space. And this is a perfect example of that. So there was a road event here in years gone past. It was basically replaced by the Bighorn Gravel Race. And this is what we always say, right? Just the participation numbers that you can get in a gravel race are just always going to be smaller because there are just more barriers to entry. It's harder to get on. And even the race organizer himself made a comment, like he's like, we ride our bikes, especially, and this is speaking to the metro area. Of course, there are people who live where Dylan Johnson lives who can just ride gravel all day, but the metro area rider who rides their road bike 90% of the time, but then was then riding the gravel bike 10% of the time, but the gravel bike was the thing that they were competing on. And this guy is basically saying what we've been going on about, which is people actually just want to ride the road bikes because that's what they're used to riding. And so there's less barriers to entry, and hence you can get more participation numbers. And the fact that the gravel race has been a success and has shown the town that it's good to get people in has been the way to essentially bring road racing back. Now, what's coming back here is not a race as such; it is a ride. But needless to say, it's mass participation.
Yeah, you could say technically it's not a race, but to an enthusiast, a Gran Fondo is their race, even though it's not a road race. Yeah. Okay.
And this is the thing that we've gone on about, is that it's been the not necessarily the death of the road racing. I do think that gets overplayed a bit, especially in the US. I actually think specifically in that sort of west area, it's doing pretty well numbers wise. But there is a real shortage of the mass participation style events, and this being one of them. The other thing that I noticed out of this was one of the styles that they're big into, and we see this in the comments sometimes with the US mass participation events, is the time segments thing. Have you seen this? So
I've never done one.
No.
It doesn't exist in Australia.
And people are really bullish on how this works. From an outsider looking in, I don't like it. For me, that removes it just takes another layer out. I might as well just go do Strava KOM hunting or Strava PR hunting. But Levi's Gran Fondo was one of the first ones that did it, and they have a growler course where they have, I think, 3 different time zones, and that's literally what it is. It's 3 Strava segments, and your result is based on the time that you do in those 3 periods. And in the other areas, you chill and ride around and do sort of. So you're doing 3 intervals.
Yeah, but you know what that would be like? It'd be like our old team rides. You go on a team camp, and you're not racing the whole course, but everyone has a whack up the 3 climbs along the route, and you're kind of comparing times after. That's basically what that is. I think that format can work. It's fun.
It can work, and from what I understand from a purely like logistic perspective, it's much easier to, let the flag drop for a certain area and sort of marshal that zone off. But then in the in-between areas, you don't have to have as much traffic management. Maybe it's not fully closed roads for those particular segments. And so you've got a little bit more leniency, and in a time when we've seen bloody traffic management and bits and pieces causing issues, that I can totally see why that is from a promoter's perspective and a race organizer's perspective, a far easier way to do things. All right, so subscriber question, Jesse Coyle. Subscriber question. This was to myself. So I've noticed in your videos, your cadence is quite high. I'm wondering what the ideal cadence is and the best way to build a higher cadence. I tend to grind away at a lower cadence and am wondering how I can get my cadence higher.
Okay. Your ideal cadence is whatever you self-select when you're going hard without necessarily thinking about it. And you would want to ideally over time train yourself, if that is naturally low, let's say sub 80 RPM, to get that up higher. It's less fatiguing to do that. How do you do that? You just spend more time at a higher cadence. Really? Instead of riding around on an endurance ride at 70 RPM, sit at 80, 85. And do that for hours upon hours on hours. And you'll just find your naturally self-selected cadence gets higher. So that's that's a simple one, really. Nothing more to it than that.
I kind of find that you do everyone has a natural cadence, but it is easy to fall into a bad habit of a slow cadence, if that makes sense. Whereas it's hard to do the opposite. You don't slide into a high cadence as a bad habit. It tends to roll the other way. And so it is. I know Dan, for example, he's very much everyone has their own standard cadence. True, but I do think that there's a world where you just slowly begin grinding and it happens over time, which you can get yourself out of.
Yes.
Definitely.
100%. Yep.
But I wanted to, unless you've got something else you sort of want to add to that. I do want to just quickly discuss the idea of the low cadence training.
Yes.
Because this, I think you pointed out this is a cycling podcast.
I didn't point this out, but.
No, you pointed these guys out a while ago, the EVOQ.
Oh, yeah, we did chat about
cycling
them.
Podcast.
Can't remember what that was.
And a few people sent this quote onto me, which was, when you do the low cadence intervals at 55 RPM, and if you get comfortable at doing that, you really feel an extra gear whenever you start doing hard efforts like VO2 max intervals. And that was a quote from Brendan Hausler and Landry Bobo.
Okay.
Bobo.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up is you're a big believer in low cadence work.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe give your...
Do you do low cadence work?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Yep.
And I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't.
You just don't.
I don't have a theory. I just don't.
Yep. I wouldn't... So if I declare... I'd say I'm a believer in it. I wouldn't say I'm like strong in it. I'd probably say if I got a group of 20 riders, I would probably at some stage in the year give low cadence work to a third, maybe a half, which I actually feel is quite a lot of prescription of low cadence training. The problem with it is the research on it is there's just hardly any research on it, and any research on it's done is not very good. So how does it improve performance? How does it improve your 10-minute power? We're basically going to just have to guess the mechanisms because there's no mechanisms laid out in research. Like there is with strength training. You saying, I go to the gym and I do strength training twice a week. Why could that improve my 20-minute power? Well, there's mechanisms in there. I can go into them if you want. It's probably slightly irrelevant for the low cadence chat. That doesn't exist for low cadence work. So you've got this situation where a lot of professional riders do low cadence work. I've done low cadence work and I believe it has a benefit. But if I was going to go into reasons why that improves performance, I'd be guessing. So I don't know what answers do you want to know how I do it or what I think happens when you do it?
I want to know how you use low cadence. So as part of your training structure, where do you slot it in and how does it work in a session?
Okay. I use it. A lot of people say, oh, you should like do it early coming out of winter earlier in the season, which I I sometimes do that. I also think for riders that aren't doing a real season-based training, if they're not necessarily racing, if a rider's plateaued and they've already they've done like 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and they're sort of plateauing and they've done all the sessions and they've really gotten a pretty good increase, but they're starting to plateau and they're going, well, how am I going to get another 5 watts on my 10-minute power? What's going on? I feel like it can have a really good benefit there as well. It's something to sort of try as a way of varying the type of aerobic stimulus in directly in a build or a peak phase, not just earlier in the season. And then as well, earlier in the season, if you're trying to increase the training stimulus without increasing the hours or increasing the load, the TSS, then low cadence work can help be more demanding without necessarily doing any more load. Because there's not a lot of research on the mechanisms by which low cadence training could improve performance, I think a lot of people pull from the strength training related ones because there is a lot of good evidence for that. And
That's
so
a good point.
There's probably 2 that are worth kind of mentioning. When you do strength training, what does that do? Increase the size of your muscle, the cross-sectional area. And they've done studies on this where they, after 12 weeks, look at the muscle cross-section area, do a biopsy of the muscle, and then look at what the aerobic enzyme activity is per unit of muscle. And so they did this and they found that the concentration of aerobic enzymes in the muscle after, I think it was 12 weeks, remained unchanged in the strength training group and the group that wasn't doing strength training. They were both doing endurance training. But the strength training group had an increased cross-sectional area, had more muscle. And so overall, you've got more aerobic enzymes as a total because you've just simply got more muscle. And the VO2 max, so the amount of oxygen going to the muscle, didn't change. The concentration of the aerobic enzyme didn't change, but you've just got more muscle. And then so that's how that increases what's called the fractional utilization of VO2 max. So you can hold a higher percent of your VO2 max for longer in the strength training group in that study.
But
that's
no one's putting muscle on doing 55 RPM.
Exactly. And that's why when you might have heard people say, oh, strength training on the bike isn't like doing strength work. And it's because, yes, you're unlikely to get hypertrophy when you're doing strength, your high torque, low cadence work. And therefore, I don't think that mechanism would be helping.
Can I just use B-roll right at the moment of me doing a deadlift? Did a max last week.
You hit it.
Sorry.
There you go.
There it is. Popped in.
Yep.
Continue.
Increased cross-sectional area for Chris Miller there. But the other one I think is probably potentially going to happen is, and I'll just read this sentence out. One suggestion is that an increase in the proportion of type 2A muscle fibers, which are more endurant. They're fast-twitch muscle fibers, but they have aerobic ability. At the expense of the type 2X muscle fibers might be a contributor to improved cycling economy, since the type 2A fibers have been suggested to be more economical than type 2X fibers. This would, in theory, improve your cycling economy. And I do think that one's potentially happening. When you're riding at a high torque and a low cadence, you're having to activate more muscle fibers. Those type 2A fibers are going to be getting stressed more than riding at a regular cadence, and therefore you probably get something of that type 2X to type 2A conversion from the low cadence work, which will just make over time, if you do enough of it, make your cycling more economical. So that's probably one to look at. But again, there's not really any, when you're talking about low cadence training, like, there's not really much point spending time talking about mechanisms because almost everyone's just making it up as they go because there's not much research on it. In a way, if you want to think about it this way, it's kind of like doing heat training in the sense that you're not doing more power. It's just that it's overloading you in a way which is getting a slightly different stimulus than normal, and there's a chance that that different stimulus allows you to adapt. The problem is it's just way more fatiguing. And most riders are trying to get through training with less fatigue, not more. And so when I said that if I was coaching 20 riders, I might give a third of them to a half, maybe low cadence training, it's because the majority, that's just going to increase their chance of overtraining and it's going to make them maladapted. So you're kind of already going down, and there's a whole bunch of people I wouldn't recommend this to because it's more fatiguing, and they're better off just doing regular training, getting more aerobic stimulus or less fatigue.
I know it sounds weird, but I do think it's also a difficult thing to do correctly. Number one, to actually to ride at the correct low cadence and to be holding decent sort of form and pedal stroke whilst actually doing that. I certainly found that when I did go through a phase of doing it, that I either wouldn't do a low enough cadence, or when I did drop down, I potentially just didn't have enough strength even to do it. And I turned into this like proper smashing pedal. Like I wasn't engaging my core enough. It's not something that you can just suddenly do. Well, I couldn't anyway. I found it was certainly a skill to learn to do it properly.
I mean, for you, given that you're already doing strength training and you're already still seeing improvement through regular training, it wouldn't really make sense for me to give it to you. And generally, you do have pretty good time availability to train. So, yeah, I don't think you're missing out on anything doing it. What would I do? What sort of sessions? I do I prescribe longer stuff. So like 8-10 minutes. Generally not too low cadence. I generally recommend sort of 50 to 60 RPM. Power will end up being somewhere low zone 4. Also shorter ones, like 3-minute repeats, but I'd generally get these sub 50 RPM. You can look at the torque. Some training, like today's plan, I could actually prescribe in torque and look at the torque. Training Peaks, at least on their web platform, I'm not sure in WKO, or if you can maybe see torque, you can't do it on the web platform. So, it's just more of a cadence prescription. And then for that, for the 3-minute efforts, you might do 6 of them, 7 of them, 8 of them, 40 to 50 RPM. Powers usually for those is at FTP, maybe slightly above. I also think from some riders doing closer to anaerobic capacity style efforts, like 1-minute efforts with a reduced cadence can also help. A whole mix of things. It's a bit of a dark art. It's not really at the top of. It's kind of. It
is. It's one of those ones. It's almost like you see someone on Strava doing it, and you're like, "Ooh, what are they up to?"
That's why that's why I don't talk. That's why I almost don't like talking about it, because it sounds like you're doing this magical thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of it. I do think it can be beneficial, but it's almost like the way people talk about it almost overstates the benefit.
Did you see Coyle was doing strengthies?
Example. A few caveats though. Like, it does have to be quite hard. I don't think you're really going to be, if you're believing in low cadence work, you believe the adaptations that happen are real and that will help your cycling, the torque needs to be high enough. Going and just doing what you might go and do, your 10-minute climbs, and instead of doing them at 80 RPM, you do them at 70. I highly doubt that the motor unit recruitment is going to be anywhere near high enough to be doing that. So I do believe that if you're going to do low cadence work, do them as intense sessions in the week and really try and get the torque high. Personally, I wouldn't send it in a low cadence effort more than 10 minutes at a time, because the power you're going to have to do will be so low, the torque's then not going to be high enough. And yeah, put them as key sessions, and I would say do them quite hard. Do them quite intense. Try and get the torque up to give yourself the best chance of doing it. Don't just sort of ad hoc sort of drop the cadence 15 RPM. It's probably not going to be getting you there. And my final thing would be, if you're not doing low cadence training, I wouldn't stress about it. I don't get in your head that you need to be doing low cadence work. It's kind of marginal, I would say.
All right, big thanks to Dan, Tom, Elliot, and to yourself.
Thanks,
Chris.
Chris.
Coyle.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will see everyone next week for a full run through of Chris's horrific experience.
See you then.
See you then.